You're watching Baptist Health's Resource Live, where our respected experts bring you timely and practical health and wellness information to improve your family's way of life. We're healthcare that cares. This is Resource Live.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jonathan Fialco, Chief Population Health Officer for Baptist Health South Florida, coming to you live from the Baptist Health Newsroom. All of us in the Baptist Health community want to express our shared prayers for our community members involved in the tragedy at Surfside. Unfortunately, tragedies are with us, and the purpose of today's Resource Live is to address how we can avoid another kind, that of incidental drownings, especially in children. Water safety is important for all ages, but especially for toddlers. Drowning is the leading cause of injury death in children 1 to 4. Young children can drown in as little as an inch or 2 of water. It can happen quickly and silently. Older kids are also at risk, especially when swimming in the ocean with waves and rip currents. And tragically, Florida has the most child drowning deaths in the United States. We're surrounded by water, and it's essential to protect yourself and your loved ones from drowning hazards. For our discussion today, we have with us experts from Baptist Health and Nicholas Children's Health System, as well as a specialist in teaching kids to swim. I'd like to welcome Dr. Fernando Mendoza, Medical Director, Baptist Health Pediatric Emergency Care, and Medical Director of Community Initiatives with Nicholas Children's Hospital. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Fernando.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Dr. Zulma Berrios, Chief Medical Officer, West Kendall Baptist Hospital and Water Safety Champion. Thanks for being here, Zulma.
Very happy to be with you.
And Karina Anania, owner of Little Swimmers. Great to have you on the panel with us, Karina. Thanks to all of you guys for being here. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me as well.
Before we dive into today's subject, I want to remind our visitors to send in your questions and comments throughout the segment. We're here for you and happy to answer any questions you may have. Also, we're giving away 2 swimming scholarships from Little Swimmers during today's live show. So be sure to comment or ask a question to be eligible to win. So let's get going with the dialogue. Fernando, let's start with you. We know that many toddlers are curious, they're active, they explore their surroundings, and they seem to be attracted to water. Why are the toddler years considered the highest drowning risk? And why do our statistics bear that out?
Yeah, right. Well, you said it. Their job as toddlers are to be exploratory. Their job is to go out and explore the world and be kids, be toddlers. So that's really the most important part about water safety and drowning prevention in children in this age, is that there is no such thing as, turning your head and not being supervised. You have to supervise these kids these age 100% of the time, especially around water. It's even more important to do that when you have water features around you, whether it's pool, beach, canal, especially if you're in an unfamiliar situation where you go visit aunties or grandparents' house or a friend's house that you don't have a pool, but they do, and they may not be kind of child preventative or child, kind of protecting the water the way you would normally at your house. They can be especially careful. The job of a toddler is to explore. You mentioned the nationwide statistics, and we know that that nationwide drowning kills kids more between the ages of 1 to 4 more than every other cause except birth defects. Think about that. More than car accidents, more than poisoning, it's drowning that kills kids. And in Dade County, we lead the state with an average of about 45 deaths per year in our county. So it's really a problem here in our county, right at home, where toddlers are really the ones suffering the most from this.
Do you have any statistics, and maybe this is true for everyone, regarding are drowning deaths in toddlers more likely at the home or outside the home? As you said, when people are visiting the grandparents or visiting other places where you might be less attentive or you don't have the proper protection. Do you have any sense of that?
The county doesn't break it down by whether they're at home or not at home, but pool deaths are the leading cause for drowning deaths in the state and in our county. So for sure, it's pools, whether it's at your own house or other people's houses. That kind of, it's hard to parse out. But from experience in the emergency department, we do see quite a bit of these drownings occur when you're not in your own house. But many of them also happen within your own house, especially when even though the county requires regulations to have a fence around the yard and even around the pool. I mean, pool fences aren't 100% effective. They're meant to delay a toddler from getting into the pool. I mean, a pretty smart toddler, a 3 or 4 year old, can get there, pull a pool furniture and climb over the fence and get into that pool. Especially, think about it. They were just in the pool with mom and dad and the family. They were in great time. There's 100% supervision. Everyone goes back into the house and is doing their thing. And toddler says, I don't want to stop playing. I want to go back into the pool. But maybe we didn't close that pool fence. Or maybe the furniture was left next to the pool fence. And the toddler says, I'm going to go back and explore and do what I thought was really fun. I felt safe and protected with my family. Of course, they're watching me now. The toddler doesn't know that the supervision is not there.
So the themes that we're going to be reiterating through the course of this Resource Live are vigilance and don't get complacent. It takes seconds, so stay on top of the kid, your child, and be hyper vigilant in that setting. And to that end, Zulma, drowning is every parent's worst nightmare. And unfortunately, you have a personal story. There's this misconception that you'll hear your child cry for help, which gives you the opportunity to prevent a drowning. Is that true? What kind of drowning look like, just for the interest of making, again, that parent aware?
So drownings, for the most part, are a silent event. It's not what you see in the movies and the comedies and commercials that people are splashing and raising their arms and calling attention. For the most part, a person that is in trouble and is about to drown, they're going to be silent. They're going to try. The only thing that you're going to see is movement on their legs, like if they're climbing a stair, and their eyes get hazy, and you see that they fall under the level of the water, and they try to move again. It's not a alarming event for the person. It's an alarming event, but there's not a lot of noise that will alarm others to be aware of what's happening. That's why when we do these orientations, we make sure that we touch every point. Supervision, physical measures to prevent and delay, mitigate the access to the bodies of water, then equip the kids and the toddlers with swimming lessons and the ways to defend themselves. And then in the event that there is a near drowning, talk about CPR. So we take that stepwise approach to make sure that when we fail in that split second of supervision, that there are other things that are going to protect your children from drowning. And that's exactly what happened to our family. My niece Elena was during the day at the pool with family. Everybody went inside. She was taking a nap. She asked for a bottle of milk. That went to get that, and when he went back, she was already underwater. She just gained access to the pool again undetected, and there was no warning sign. And unfortunately, she died on about she will be 16 years now, and she was only close to 2 years old. So those are the things that we want to make sure through these conversations to share, at least my experience. And then that came with the goal, and that's why you said I'm the water safety champion here at Baptist Health and our hospital, West Kendall Baptist, because we want to try and equip everyone, all families in Dade County, to prevent something like this from happening.
A lot of times people think of things that they don't immediately see as remote and can't happen to me and can't happen to us. And again, I thank you for sharing that personal story, which obviously drives your passion. And I think anything we can do to really get this message across and resonate with the viewers is of value. So again, I thank you for that, as well as being our water safety champion. You create a great segue to Karina. As you said, Zulma, we want to look at every opportunity to prevent a drowning, from vigilance, surveillance, protection, training, CPR. Let's talk a little bit about water safety and swim lessons, Karina. And this is, I guess, true for children and parents. Recent studies do suggest that water survival skills and swim lessons can help reduce drowning risk for all children, starting at a very early age. What age do you generally recommend swim lessons? And tell me from your experience and your expertise, what can a toddler really learn about water safety?
Yeah, perfect. So swimming lessons really offers a layer of protection that anything else really cannot. We accept students as young as 8 months. A good way to gauge if your child is ready for swimming lessons would be if they're mobile, if they're already starting to stand up, they're gripping onto furniture, trying to walk around, because like Dr. Mendoza said, and like Dr. Barrio said, children are extremely curious and the water calls to them. So we really want to make sure that they get in the water as soon as possible. The earlier you get them in, the easier it's going to be for them. And at a young age, we're just looking for survival skills. We want to make sure that they can save themselves in case they fall into the pool and nobody's supervising. Children are curious, and sometimes this is repeated, but they're having a great time. Everybody goes inside, it's lunchtime, and they want to go back out to keep on having fun, or they want to climb over the furniture because they want to get back into the pool. So we want to make sure that, God forbid something happens, they can save themselves. Make sure you look for a program that they can turn around, hold their breath, open their eyes. We want to make sure they know where they're swimming to and can get back to safety, whether that be the wall or the steps.
Do you let the parents participate in the training?
Yes, we do. So we offer several programs. We have a Mommy and Me program, not just for moms. It can be any caretaker with the babies, and that's open for anyone between 8 months old to toddler 2.5. But definitely our most popular program is the private, and we do invite the parents to participate as well on the very last day, because we want for the parents to also have the skills to continue building the confidence in their children to know what to do in case they're ever found in this sort of situation.
That's wonderful. We obviously continue to hear about the tragedy and the drowning, but we don't think of the countless lives that have been saved in a potential drowning environment because the child had those swim lessons and was able to avoid that. Zulma, back to you. Again, Fernando mentioned barriers like pool fences. One level of protection, obviously the vigilance is of paramount importance. So what are the kind of things that we want people to be aware of they should have in their homes, and if they have pools or other, drowning risks, or even to make sure that people they're visiting have if they're taking their family to them? Can you talk about a couple of the things that are available?
Absolutely. As Fernando mentioned, ordinances and codes require that there has to be a gate around the pool, or access to the pool that needs to be gated. Important to, it will be a good idea that those should be self-latching gates. So as soon as they close, they're latched and will be difficult for a toddler to open by themselves. Other things that are common to find will be nets around the pool, pool fences, not just the gates that are, iron aluminum gates on the entry points to your backyard. If you have an alarm in your house that has chime, that you can activate the chime with the doors open, and you can select the doors that go to the backyard and to the access to the pool to keep those chimes on, so that you know that if that chime goes off, you better run and go and check what's going on. In the pool itself, there's many different flotation devices and level devices and disturbance of the water detectors that will also ring an alarm if something falls in the water. Not only, it could be a cat, it could be your dog, but it could be your toddler that, access the pool without your acknowledging. There are other devices, are personal devices that you can put in your toddler that also, when there is a contact with water, that will alarm you that the toddler is in the water. So there are many different options out there for you to support and make sure that the water access is protected. And that also includes for lakes. If you have a house that has a backyard that faces a lake or a body of water, those should be gated, self-latching in the same way that you would protect a pool. So it's important to consider those too.
Again, appreciate that information. And it's fair to say it's not one or the other. You would advocate as many of those.
As many as you could. Absolutely.
Right. One other thing to add, and something I see and think about as I go through our neighborhood with such a building frenzy in South Florida, even though there are codes to try to prevent it, one has to be sensitive to home constructions in your area where pools are being built and your toddler can get out. So it goes back to the many areas where you want to have that surveillance and vigilance. Karina, I'm going to throw a question and a follow-up question at you, really to clarify certain things which, as a parent of 20-year-olds may not be as attuned to, but certainly want our viewers to be aware of. So, we know that a lot of the drownings occur and the family member, the parent is so close there. So talk about touch supervision, these concepts, again, further towards being available and preventing the drowning episode?
Absolutely. So you want to have a designated water watcher, especially if you're having some sort of event. You want to have somebody that can reach arm's length and help if they're struggling, if they need any sort of assistance. Make sure that there's one designated water watcher. Yesterday, I read something that says if everybody's watching the pool, that means nobody's watching the pool. Everybody's assuming that someone else is doing the job, and that's when accidents happen. You want to make sure that this person who's watching the water, watching the children in the water, is a responsible adult. Don't leave this responsibility for an older child, maybe an older sibling. It's too much of a risk. Make sure that somebody is watching. If you need to go to the restroom or anything like that, want to go inside, refill on your drink, make sure you pass it along to somebody else that's also responsible and sober. That's very, very important. You want to make sure that they're watching, counting the children, making sure that the flotation devices, nobody's underneath them. If everybody's wrapping up the event and everybody's going home, make sure that you clear the pool, make sure nothing is at the bottom and nothing is there to really draw the children back to continue the party. So you want to make sure that you have someone designated at all times. Very, very important.
It's fascinating. We make these recommendations towards people. You think of designated drivers when the kids are older and getting out a little more, but it's the same type of concept, same type of concern. Who's the accountable person? Handoff if they're not there. Did someone have a comment to add to that?
I want to comment that. I want to add to that. What Karina was saying is that if you're going to have an event, maintain pool parties, birthday parties, we're seeing a lot more of this. You might even want to consider hiring a lifeguard, someone who's really just their job it is to be on site. And, for the same, probably a lot less money you pay for a bounce house or for, whatever other, a thing you're doing, fun thing you're doing for the kids, especially the young kids. There'll be parents who go to the party who won't want their kid in the pool because of that. But if you have a lifeguard, that can give, that's really someone who's actually being paid and trained to keep an eye on that pool.
I mean, in the time it takes to answer a phone call on your cell, bad things can happen. So I think that's, again, a great point. Karina, I did mention that maybe you can get into that touch supervision concept a little bit, what that actually alludes to. Again, something I've read about, but wasn't as cogent to me at this stage of my life, but hopefully with grandchildren soon, it may become that way. Tell us about that.
Touch supervision basically is just that you're able to be there. You're able to watch, you're watching them constantly. You're looking back, you're able to touch them. It's not just in the pool, but bath time as well. You don't want to go, the phone rings, you go, come back, tragedies happen. It can happen in the bath. It can happen even with the toilet. I remember when my children were young, we had a lock on the toilet seat because we were scared that they were going to get curious, maybe want to throw some toys down the toilet or anything to see how it flushed and that they would fall in. Just because of their weight distribution, they wouldn't be able to get back out. So you really want to make sure that you're there, constantly watching them. It's very simple. It's just, I guess, time consuming, and people forget. They think that they can do something in a matter of a few seconds, but that's all it takes for a drowning in very little water. So
the touch supervision, the surveillance, the designated watcher, these have to become part of people's routines.
Yeah.
The complacency, even the alerts that Zulma mentioned, you want to set just for those doors. So if it goes off incorrectly, don't say turn it off, it's a pain. These become part of your routines. They're there for a reason, and they do work. So again, great continued messaging. Fernando, now in a tragedy, calling 911, usually the first step. What should anyone do if a child is pulled from the water, theirs or someone else's, if they're there during that episode? What can one do?
Well, for starters, you want to make sure that you're safe, that the person who's going to be attending to the child feels comfortable in or around the water. We'll hear stories of, and I've seen this in the ER, that there's a nanny at the house, but they don't know how to swim, so they didn't go into the pool, and we have to wait till fire rescue gets there. But make sure that you're comfortable in the water. We don't want to turn one potential tragedy into two. But remove the child from the water as soon as possible. Remove that the child get them into a safe place, put them on the ground, get them away from the water, and then really you're talking about basic CPR. You're talking about checking for breathing, if you know how to do that. Checking for a pulse, if you know how to do that. If there's a pulse and if you see chest movement and rise and a pulse, you wait till 911 gets there. If not, you need to start CPR. And the most important part of that CPR is the compressions, not the breathing, but the compressions. But certainly before you start CPR, calling 911 is of the utmost importance. That's really the most critical thing. So my advice would be, if you have young children, for a number of reasons, not just for pool or water safety, for choking hazard, for other things, take a CPR class. There's lots of resources in the community that offer CPR classes for parents, for caregivers, for nannies, for grandparents, and that's really essential. It's just the basics of understanding what it takes to revive and kind of get that bridge until 911 can get there.
Again, a very important public health message. Hopefully no one will ever need their CPR knowledge and skills, but it does save lives in many scenarios, including the ones you just described. So that's another great opportunity people have to both help themselves and family members and maybe some other people in their community. Zulma, we talked again, pools aren't the only threats. We have water all around us in South Florida. We have boaters and water skiers and jet skiers. Let's talk a little bit about life jackets for children on bodies of water. What are the recommendations for life jackets? And are there any circumstances where it's okay for a child not to have a life jacket in a boat or in a water exposure?
The personal flotation devices and life jackets, they need to be sized to the person that's going to wear them. And the floaties that go in the arms, those are not life jackets. And the things that look like a tire that you inflate, those are not life jackets. A personal flotation device is specifically designed to be on your body, and that it will, for the case of toddlers, that will raise the head above the water and keep that head out of the water. But flotation devices are for everyone. We were talking about in the basin, we see jet skiers, boaters, rowers, people in paddle boards and kayaks. All those should be wearing their life jackets, their personal flotation devices, because if you go, huli out, fall in the water, there's a lot of upper arm and body strength that you need to get back on your vessel. And I wouldn't trust myself without my personal flotation device when I go out in the water. And in the boats, the kids should have their flotation device all the time. I was watching a video out of my hometown of Puerto Rico of a vessel in choppy waters, and the kids were jumping. They were jumping on that vessel, and almost to the point of being thrown overboard. If they don't have the flotation device, there's not a lot that we can do for them. And it's not only for kids. Our teenagers, they feel invincible, and they will go out very far out on kayaks and paddle boards without any personal flotation device. That's scary, because again, there's other people in the water at the same time with you. A wake puts you off. You have to defend yourself, and if you don't have a flotation device, you're going to be depending on your strength that may not be that great, especially if you've not been on the water and being trained to maintain that stamina to get back on your vessel.
Such simple tools like life jackets and flotation devices can make such a big difference, but they don't work if you're not wearing them when you have that situation. So appreciate that. A few final questions before we wrap up. Karina, and again, terms that we hear in the community, buddy systems. Talk about where buddy systems are appropriate. Are they always appropriate? And how they could be helpful for children and adults. I mean, swimming alone in and of itself is a risk, as great an exercise it is. Can you speak to buddy systems a little bit and what you recommend and preach?
Absolutely. So we always want to swim with a buddy. Doesn't matter how efficient we are as swimmers, doesn't matter how well trained we are, we can always cramp up, we can slip, fall, hit our head, fall in. So you want to have a buddy so that if you're in trouble, they can go and get help for you, or vice versa. A lot of times these children, like Dr. Berrio said, they feel invincible and they get tired. If they're out on the water, a current can take them, and we need to be able to have someone else to assist in finding help for us. If you are in open water, or in the pool, and you tire yourself out, maybe get a cramp, try to float if you can. Very important. Try to float and call for help. Very, very important.
couple of questions now from the audience. Fernando, tell us a little bit about dry drowning and secondary drowning.
Right, that's a great question, and that's something that always pops up in the media, especially this time of year. And actually, dry drowning is a misnomer, right? It's not a real term that we use medically. It's not an medically accepted term. Neither is secondary drowning. I mean, drowning is really just defined as a process of experiencing any kind of respiratory impairment after being submerged in liquid, typically water, of course, or pool or salt or fresh water. So dry drowning, it gets a lot of hype in the media because you get kids who come out of the pool or out of the situation, and a few hours later, or that night, they're found to have, found dead in the bed or something like that. I think it's a drowning issue. Really, what you're talking about is kind of aspiration. So it is water getting in the lungs. You come out of a pool, a kid or an adult or somebody, and they're coughing, having a difficulty breathing. Any symptom where you get water into the lungs, okay, can cause injury to the lungs. And that you're going to see that within a few hours. We talk about children here, right? So, or even adults, but really in children, what we're focusing on is if your child comes out coughing, sputtering, having difficulty breathing for any time after that, that's a reason to get them evaluated by a medical professional, typically in the emergency room. Now, they get out of the water, you pull them out, there's a little coughing episode, and within a few hours later, you notice they're having difficulty breathing, they're still coughing, they're breathing more heavily than usual, decreased activity. I'm not talking about like, oh, they're tired from pool, but decreased activity, somnolence or sleepiness, all reason to go be seen by a medical professional, get an x-ray typically, or an oxygen saturation, make sure that the water hasn't entered the lung and caused damage to the lung. Anything after 8 or 9 or 12 hours, the next day or day after, that's not a drowning issue. That's typically something else that's affecting the patient. So dry drowning is really not, it's something we want to really get rid of as far as nomenclature or a term, but it's still out there in the media. So really what you're looking for is are your lungs injured because water entered the lungs, the water went down the windpipe down the wrong, pipe, the water into the lungs damaged the lungs. And that really we're seeing within a few minutes to hours after the event. So keep an eye out for that.
But the more common concerns are what we've already discussed.
Yes.
Zulma, last question, as time is quickly upon us. Can you just quickly go through other water hazards that one should be aware of and be vigilant about and inside the house and around the house?
I think that Karina touched upon some of them, buckets, toilets, bathtubs, any of those inflatable pools that you have that you may use to cool everybody out when it's so hot outside, the lakes, the rivers, dams, ditches that, around construction, as you mentioned, there is a lot of construction going around in our county. Those are all any 2 inches or more of water that are stagnant there, and the baby's proportion of their head weighs more than the rest of the body. They fall, they cannot regain their posture and bring their head out of water. So those are the ones that the areas that we'll need to be looking into. And I wanted to make a mention about, we need to also make sure that our pools are safe, mechanically safe, that the skimmers are covered, that there's no areas that there may be entrampment. And that goes for your personal pools, the people that you're visiting, the community pools and those community areas. And if you're sending your kids to camp, make sure that if they're going to participate in camps, that it will include water events, that those are safe and with correct supervision.
Really informative conversation, folks. I'm going to take panel host privilege and just ask Dr. Berrios for any final comments, given her a role in her commitment and her experience. Any final comments you'd like to either reiterate or bring up that we didn't get to before we wrap up?
I would say that water safety is a team effort, and it takes a lot of preparation and being conscientious about the steps that you want to put. And as we said, is the supervision, that touch supervision and that body system, and making sure that you are aware of your kids all the time. Then you put the physical barriers, because if we're human and we're going to have lapses, and we're going to make sure that then we have barriers that are going to avoid and prevent access to water. If they still reach the water, swimming lessons, giving them the skills to protect themselves and save themselves. And unfortunately, there's still going to be those incidents that will need to be prepared to call 911 and do CPR. I think that if we implement all that, there is a concept in medical safety about zero harm. I think that we can reach zero drowning for sure.
Again, to our panel, thank you all for sharing your insights. And to the viewers, we'll be sending the 2 winners of the Little Swimmers Swim Scholarship a reply in the comment section, informing them that they've won. Be on the lookout to see if you're a winner. Remember, viewers, you can connect with us on our social media channels. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and check out our resource blog for the latest news at baptisthealth.net/news. That's baptisthealth.net/news. And you'll find a link there to all the episodes of the Baptist Health Talk podcast as well. On behalf of everyone at Baptist Health, we ask you to please stay safe and say yes to the COVID-19 vaccine.
Find additional valuable health and wellness information on our resource blog at baptisthealth.net/news. And be sure to interact with us on our social media channels for live and upcoming events. Resource Live is brought to you by Baptist Health South Florida. Healthcare that cares.